Hello everyone and welcome to your channel. It's Uxtsuki. In this video, I'm gonna talk about something that is important for most part of people, and I understand, but my problem is just because people actually chase this too early before they learn the other things. That is about style. So actually, I will give you a list of things that, in my opinion, affect the art style and how we discussed before and how this kind of affects your pixel art style. Alright, so the first thing is the canvas size. You are able to pick whichever canvas size you want, but you have the knowledge that bigger the canvas is, more detail you are able to make, and the smaller the canvas is, more condensed the details are. So you might pick 16 by 16, 32 by 32, 64 by 64, 128, 128, 180, 180, whatever the canvas size, but having a very consistent canvas size is actually a good idea in order to achieve your style. Secondly is the color palette. So we have the number of colors, so if you have 2 or 3 or 4 and so on colors available for you. The saturation, if it is something more saturation, it is something like happy, cozy, warm, cute, less saturated. So it is like a sad, more serious tone. We have the temperature and the mood. As I said, this also affects the whole experience of your pixel art. So cool tones like blue, purples, or warm tones like red, orange, and yellow, and the mood like happiness or sadness or hungry or cold or financial or food and so on, like the color theory. We have AA, we have interlacing. So if you do not use interlacing, or you use just a bit, just 1 pixel to smooth, or more interlacing, like more or 50, that 50% that I said in the interlace video. The color harmony, so split complementary, triad, analogous, square, and so on. And contrast, so as I said, the distance, the hue, the saturation, all of this affects the contrast. As well, the hue shifting. If your shadows is a little bit more greenish, or your highlights is actually more purplish and so on, the general idea is purples for the shadows and yellows for the lights, but actually you can shift towards whatever you want. And the color roles that I talked in the light roles video, that is, if you use the same color that you use for some flat color in other objects as highlights for other objects as well. We have the light, so if you have one main source of light or two main sources, the bounce light, the ambient light, as I talked, light from below usually is very dramatic, right? And you also have the consistency or the idea of your global light or local light. So for example, as I said, you would pick in a 3D grid, like if your light is in the left, center, in the right, or in the top, in the middle, in the bottom, or either in front, in the same plane, or in the back of the subject. And about bounce light or even different light source, as for example, you might have this sun or lamp above the subject, but you also have a glowing crystal in the bottom of the subject. So actually you have two different light sources. About the outlines, so if you use outlines, if you use inner lines in the thickness of the outline, so actually if you use a 2 pixel wide for your outline, or 3 or only 1, or does not use, or if it is colored, or if it is leaked, or and so on. We have the shape language, so we have the circles and ovals, ellipses being friendly, changeable, and we have the squares being relatable, sturdy, diamonds and triangles for dangerous or risky, and so on. And you also have the use of polygons into making something. If, for example, your llama or alpaca is a circle with a cylinder, another cylinder, and cones to make the legs, for example. We have the abstraction in use of clusters. As I said, cluster can be in any type, any size, and in order to imply something is something, usually you can go for cluster with a certain color and just a detail to hint what it is, and it can be read as the same thing, or actually the lack of a cluster. So actually is cleanliness, or if it is something noisy, use for example dithering or use of a lot of clusters. We have the material rendering that I talked about, that four things, that is the clusters or the texture, the light diffusion or specularity, the reflection and transparency of the material. We have the perspective, so you have the side view, top down, three-fourths, isometric, bimetric, and so on. We have the depth or flatness, so maybe you want something that is not that faithful into the perspective, or actually you want everything being more realistic. You are able to use vanishing points and make grids out of it. We have the camera, so depending on where the camera is positioned, so you have like a very far to the view of the subject, or actually we have a third person camera and so on. We have the structure and the proportions of the subject. So as I said, the structure is the opposite of gesture basically. So when you focus in one, you lose the other part, as the same thing as cluster and detail and cleanliness and readability. We have symmetry and asymmetry of the body. So if something, for example, as slime have symmetry, it makes sense. But if you do not have symmetry, maybe it is because it is damaged, an accident happens, so you have even more lore behind to imply. We have the poses, that is also something that affects the structure and proportions. As I said, in the structure and the proportions, if you want something cute, usually one head high to the body and the head itself, so usually you have a very childish and babyish proportion. If you want something realistic, you would have two heads and a half, or maybe even three heads for the torso, for the legs, the arms, something around this, for example. We have the VFX, so this also affects your art style. So if you like a lot of aura and magic circles, or actually you want something like the lack of VFX, you like particles and so on. We have the subject, so if you make a lot of pixel art from, for example, dragons, mythical creatures, or either about something that exists like dogs or cats, or more about the structures and architectures, all of this affects your style as well. The subject you pick also affects your style, because for example your art, most pixel art maybe is something about witches, old gods, curse, spells, or maybe it's a bit more church, gods, angels. Everything like this affects your style as well. We have the storytelling, the lore that is just hinted by the things around that subject. So if you have a character sit it down with a lot of books close to this subject, you may interpret as this character is wise or reads a lot. For example, we have that differentiation of foreground, midground, and background. Usually the back and the foreground have less details and less contrast, and the midground is usually where you have a lot of details and focus going on. We have a lot of stylized adorns such as rails, circles, diamonds, cubes, fake brush strokes, all of these that imply texture into the pixel art, for example, and your pixel art goal, like where it will be used or displayed, such as social medias, portfolio, games also affects. For example, in games, usually things that is not the character or the character interacts with should not have a lot of details, should not be a focal point. For example, we have as well in the art idea, we have the composition. So we have a lot of rules and composing techniques you might use, like rules of thirds, golden ratio, that I will talk about in the next video. We have the polishing phase that you might spend a lot of time fixing some how the pixels are felt, and something like this affects your final piece as well, so it affects your style. And what can I do? Just check open other art pieces, pixel art from galleries, and see what you like and try to kind of replicate. I'm not saying copy and paste, but try to dissect how people probably made that pixel art and try to implement that steps, that could be in their process that is not on yours. Something like this. All of this that affects your pixel art style, right? So you gotta pick how you want that everything are, and probably you will have a well established pixel art style. Alright? So thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.